Go. Benny, I said, here we go. Jeez. Why won't the music start? Okay,
I feel like a feather in the breeze.
We're doing this, Benny, tonight. Okay. I'll get the chat window up. Everybody. Look all the ones with traffic lights. Ugh. Does the poll count? How many captions are going to make me go through to get on my own chat? Maybe that counts as stairs? Probably. Okay, does the guy's head count as a motorcycle? I'm going to say it does. Now you say invalid email or password. This is going to bother me, guys. Oh, it's going to bother me. That's a Vespa, not a motorcycle. Hey, everybody. Welcome along. I'm just trying to log into the chat window, but it's making me go through like 90... Find all the motorcycle pictures before telling me I've got the password wrong. Hey everybody, I'm sure you're all out there. I can always go to a plan B if it comes to it. Meantime, I need to get into the old keychain and see what I'm typing incorrectly here. Had about 20 attempts to log into my Facebook account from somebody last night. I don't know why. Huh. This then. Bus. Well, hurry up and reload the other ones then. Bus again. And it still says I'm invalid. Wonderful.
I'm shooting high.
Crosswalks again. We're going to go to plan B if I don't get through it this time. I know you can see me. I just can't get the chat window up because it won't let me log in. And every attempt takes like 50 captchas to go through before they tell me the password is wrong. Well, there we go. There we are. All right, now I am on the chat. Hi, everybody. Thanks for suffering through that with me. Hey, Mary. Don't you hate it when you have to log into something and you have to figure out, is that little bit of the traffic light count? Does the helmet of the guy riding the motorcycle count as a motorcycle? All right, time for some wine. It's not a lot of bourbon that is kosher for Passover, and certainly none that I own. Alright, so now I'm here. Alright. I don't know what the issue is. Just every now and then it makes me log in again. And for some reason it makes it difficult. Hey, Miles. You hopping on over? Hop on up, why don't you? Of course I tell you. Now hop up? There you go. Who's here, everybody? It's Miles. Hey, Southside Johnny. There's the Asbury Jukes. The sound ought to be okay. It's up in the red for me. Oh, Miles. I got Miles stepping on the keyboard. That's not going to help me any. Is it? Oh, you don't care about that, do ya? No. Hey, Tado. Hey, Bob and Marine. Miles is sitting here at attention.
The National Broadcasting
Something
Company
has
is
caught his
presenting
eye
music
over
of
the side.
Benny
I don't know
Goodman
what
and
it
his
is.
orchestra
What
from
are you
the
looking at,
Joseph
Miles?
Martin Room of the Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago.
What are you looking at?
And now a special, Big John special, by Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
Hey, Jeannie. Hey, Casey, Kathleen. Hey, Dad. Thank you. Passover brought to you by Swiffer. Because man, does matzah make crumbs. Hey, Beth in Dallas. Bonnie's in Dallas today. I was there a couple weeks ago. Everybody's in Dallas. Hey, Grandma Belle. Just noticed that Memphis wasn't even a month ago. Wow. What a packed couple of months this has been for me. Hey, Luann. Luann, I don't know why I haven't adjusted a thing. Hey, Anita Innova. Hey, June. Hey, Kristen. Prom, huh? There's Alice. I thought Dylan might cover Willin in Dallas. He's covered it before, back in '95. Mike, I did in fact play tuba. Margaritas I could probably have. Tequila tends to be kosher for Passover. Most of what I got in my cabinet is not, so we're on wine tonight. Hey, Evelyn. Hey, Angie. Evening, everybody. There's Miles. He's just come up to enjoy us here. Thank you, Kathy. To you, too. Look out, look out. No, it's not a Disney wine glass. It's a Whole Foods wine glass. They used to do this thing where for $5 you got 5 wines, 5 samples. You got a glass, plus they filled it up 5 times. Johnny, only on Passover. Well, Hennessy might be. It's the fermented grapes, right? I have to check, but things with lots of grains and yeast. tend not to be. Yeah, you get to wander around Whole Foods just drinking your butt off. It was, I don't know if they still do that situation. It was a pretty good situation. Hey, Karina. Cold Ghost Tour,
Benny Goodman
yeah.
cuts his men loose on a tribute to that area below the
That'd be
main
that
station line.
guy who haunted that one
Hero
police
of
station would show up on flowing nights, on snowy nights with a flowing beard. Santa? Hey, Debbie. Oh, hey, Megan. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me tonight. We're going to let Benny Goodman do one more tune here. Sabrina, that is wild. Now, I got a bunch of Chicago school groups the next month. I'm going to get pretty sick of science and industry, honestly. They always go to that. Just had somebody... still trying to figure out this next group's itinerary that just does not work. It's like, we're never going to make it to that boat tour from that lunch. Are we a third of the way through 2024? That sounds about right. I don't know, it seems like my Memphis trip was longer ago than 3.5 weeks. We'll let Benny Goodman finish up this tune, then we'll get started properly. Thanks to everybody popping in tonight. Hey, Bella. Sue, sorry to hear that. Work. Yeah, Kristen, I love MSI and all, but I end up there a lot with school groups. Just a lot. Sabrina, I'm honored you would hang here in front instead of the draft. Hey, Sue in Nebraska. This Benny Goodman tune is longer than I thought. We're not using the show we usually play. Jamie, yes, I will be in Atlanta just for that show. Just for that one show. That's a 24-hour trip. But all right, that is... Benny has moved on to the next song. That means that we should move on a little bit as well. So... welcome along, everybody. I'm supposed to show that map a little bit later. All right, I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours here in my messy apartment on the north side of Chicago. I've been a tour guide and historian in Chicago and New York for going on 20 years now. Got about a dozen Chicago history books out, including but not limited to Mysterious Chicago, the book, as seen on TV. Smart Alex Guide to American History just got a royalty check for nearly $12 big dollars on this book from 2009. Murder Maps USA. Graceland Cemetery, Chicago's Stories, Symbols, and Secrets, which features some people from tonight's tour. So, today we are going to be doing a virtual tour of the Gold Coast, a very cool neighborhood in Chicago. Known as the Gold Coast because historically it's been a very ritzy neighborhood. These days it is a very ritzy neighborhood, though it did go through a period where a lot of the old mansions got broken up into artist studios. So it has kind of a bohemian vibe that is kind of hung around in a very strange way. So, let's just show you where we're going here. Here's the Loop, downtown Chicago. We're going to go up above Streeterville and River North, Bro City. And just above the Magnificent Mile, we come to the near north side and the Gold Coast. And here's the map we're going to be taking, the route we take here. We start out on Lakeshore Drive, move up and around, kind of take a loop around. We could probably do this one in person sometime, you know. It's a pretty walkable route. So, all right. let's go ahead and get started. For those of you new around here, we do virtual tours every Thursday night and also short ones every single morning at 10 o'clock, as long as I can get to a camera at 10 o'clock. So we started this, of course, during the pandemic, and things just kind of caught on. People love going on tours from the comfort of their own home, and it's easy for me to do this, too. I don't have to commute down to the Gold Coast today, though I was down there anyway. So, all right, here we are on Lakeshore Drive, starting with a few buildings that you've probably driven by a million times if you're in Chicago. You got to drive up and down Lakeshore Drive pretty regularly here, and you pass these houses, but you might have never actually noticed them. So this one, what we are seeing here, is 1250 North Lakeshore. This is a Richardsonian Romanesque design architecturally, but it was designed by a guy named Frank Abbott. In 1890, it was built for a guy by the name of Charles Hyson. This is another Frank Abbott joint, the old North American cold storage warehouse that Harry Weiss turned into condos and lofts on the river back in the 70s. So, Mr. Hyson had a son named Carl Hyson, who was a matinee idol. And then he married Dorothy Dixon, who was a silent film actress, who then went on to sing, most notably, Look for the Silver Lining. The person who made this song popular was in this house.
There's so much I'm
They had a
wanting to
son.
tell you. There's so much I'm wanting to
This is
say.
Charles the matinee idol.
There's so much I feel that I owe you.
Really catchy tune there. They also had a daughter named Dorothy Hyson, who was a popular actress as well. But let's move over a little bit from this house of theater and music and go just a couple down. This is another one. I always want to tell this story when I take a bus past this place. But you never really get a good enough look at it just going by. But this was a famous house in Chicago in its time. It is a house that is sometimes called Desdemona's Palace. See the top to the bottom of it here. Now, it is based on this place that is said to be the home of Shakespeare's Desdemona. Built by Holabird and Roche, but kind of copied off of this one over in Vienna. Now, it was famous enough that you could just call it Desdemona's Palace in the press, like they did here, when they were selling off all the stuff from it. On the inside, the contents of the palatial home known as Desdemona's Palace. So, this place was eventually owned after the time of this auction in the 1920s by a guy named Edgar Leffensberger. Not a lot of good pictures of old Edgar Leffensberger. Here he is, probably serving in World War I. He operated a place called the 225 Club, a little bit further south on Lakeshore, on 1250 North Lakeshore Drive. 225 East Superior. 225 Club on 225 East Superior. This was a fancy gambling joint. He was in with the mob, of course, because if you ran a fancy gambling parlor in those days, you definitely had the mob beating down your door. In particular, he was caught up with Frank the Enforcer Nitti, the guy who took over after Al Capone went to jail. Now, after Al Capone went to jail, also Prohibition ended, so the mob found themselves looking for new ways to make money. At one point, they stole $500,000 in bonds from the mail, and the deal was that Edgar was going to be selling them to some of his high rollers. Now, then one day, they found him lying dead in one of his easy chairs inside of the house. He was sitting there with a half-smoked cigarette in the ashtray and a half-drunk thing of whiskey next to him and a gun in his hand. No one was quite sure if it was a murder. It was made to look like a suicide, at least. The general explanation that the family landed on was that the mob guys had come in and said, look, they're closing in on us. They know about the mail robbery. We've got to get rid of you. Now, we can give you a cigar, we can give you some whiskey, and you can handle things yourself, or we can take care of it, and then we'll go take care of your wife, too. So he was found by the butler in his silk pajamas with a tray of smokes and a glass of whiskey. Later, the 225 Club was owned by Machine Gun Jack McGurn. Apparently, actually was. There's a lot of places that are said to have been owned by Machine Gun Jack McGurn that may or may not have been in practice, the Green Mill. Let's loop around from here. I'm going to go over onto Astor just briefly here. Down around the block, we come to 1310 at North Astor, which is really kind of a triplex. like a duplex but with 3 places. You could look at this as just one big mansion, but it's always been divided up into 3. The middle of them was not only designed by Burnham and Root, but John Welborn Root of Burnham and Root lived in the middle one, briefly before his early death from pneumonia. Now, eventually, his sister-in-law and biographer, Harriet Monroe, the founder of Poetry magazine, moved into the place. And it was here that she hosted young Mary MacLane, the scandalous author who in 1902 had put out this book called I Await the Coming of the Devil. It was a long list of prose talking about being in love with a girl and talking about how she liked the devil. I'll read just a bit of it. Now, this was almost like Beatlemania at the time. She wrote things like, from the soft, persistent, maddening glances of water car drivers, kind devil, deliver me. From insipid sweet wine, from men who wear mustaches, from the sort of people who call legs limbs, kind devil, deliver me. From unripe bananas, from backless people, kind devil, deliver me. From old bachelors and soft old widowers, from agonizing elocutionists who recite curfew shall not ring tonight, and the lips that touch liquor shall never touch mine. Kind devil, deliver me. From people who persist in calling my good body mere vile clay. From fools who tell me what I want to do. Kind devil, deliver me. From pleasant old ladies who tell a great many uninteresting, obvious lies. From men with watch chains draped across their middles. From some paintings of the old masters which I am unable to appreciate. From side saddles. Kind devil, deliver me. From the kind of man who sings, "Oh, promise me," who sings at it from constipated dressmakers, from people who don't wash their hair often enough. Kind devil, deliver me. From a nice young man, from tin spoons, from popular songs. Kind devil, deliver me. It was almost like Beatlemania when Mary MacLane came to town, hosted by Harriet Monroe, right here in this house on Astor. She eventually died on the south side, and people were up, and I was like, what was she doing living in an overwhelmingly black neighborhood? The explanation was, she was living with her nurse. Yeah, she was her nurse. All right. We're going to move we're going to move around the corner just a little bit. Over on the edge here is Bank Street, which they tore up a couple of years ago. Underneath it were the original old wood paving blocks. That one that you see right there is presently... Do I have that one right here? Is this the very one? No, this isn't exactly the one. But I helped myself to several of these things. You smell the creosote. Well, this was a late 19th, early 20th century thing where they were doing these wooden paving blocks. There's still a couple of streets of it left, and sometimes when they tear up the pavement, they find these underneath. But let's move down the block. Just down the block from 1310 Astor, we get to a much more modern design by Bertrand Goldberg, who most famously designed Marina City and is generally said to have claimed that there are no right angles in nature. But he did have right angles in many of his buildings, including here at the Astor Hotel. Astor Hotel, you can say a lot of things about it. It's now just called the Astor Tower. It went condo years ago. But in 1966, the Beatles threw a press conference here. So this was right after they had syndicated an interview John Lennon had given in the UK where he said, Christianity will die out. We're probably bigger than Jesus now. Which would have been completely acceptable conversation in the UK. The decline of Christianity had been common dinner table discussion then ever since about World War I. But once it got reprinted out of context in the States, they started trying to cancel the Beatles. They had all of these giant Beatle birdings and things. There's a little clip of the Beatles here at the Astor, plus the crowd outside. You can see the signs and everything here. Let's take a look at this. It's the crowd gathering outside, just trying to get a glimpse of them way up there. Apparently they could see them up there.
If it had said television is more popular than Jesus, I might have got away with it. You know, but I'm not saying that we're better or greater or comparing us with Jesus Christ as a person or God as a thing or whatever it is. You know, I just said what I said and it was wrong or was taken wrong, and now it's all this.
How do you feel about the record burnings here in the United States?
Well, I think, you know, that it's a bit silly. It seems a bit like a publicity stunt on their part, you know.
Well put, Paul, well put. All right. So from the Astor, we're just going to go across the street briefly. I wish I could tell you a bit more about some of these places. On Goethe Street. I absolutely love these townhouses, and according to Preservation Chicago, they don't know who the architect was on these. They've been broken into apartments and condos now. They run about, last I checked, $500,000 or so each. I shudder to think what the assessments must be. The HOA fees are probably absurd. But while we're on a rock and roll topic anyway, let us move around the block and check out the Ambassador Hotel, which was well known as a rock and roll hotel in the 60s and 70s, and as recently as I know 2005, Dylan was staying there. But up on the window when we went there, they had pictures of like David Bowie praying inside of the place. There's been any number of stories besides just the rockers and Marilyn Monroe in there too. There was also a guy by the name of Pauly. James B. Pauly was a financier, a rich guy, who was found dead inside of the place. It was a murder-suicide. They did a whole thing here. They found his wife lying there, and he was over onto the side. They eventually ruled that he had shot his wife and then himself here in their apartment at the Ambassador Hotel due to temporary insanity. The kind of thing that they say, sometimes they just say temporary insanity because it was easier than just dealing with the notion that rich people suffer from poor mental health too. That rich people can have a breakdown even if they are, in fact, rich. But around the corner from it is the pump room, which has been redone several times. I can't remember what they even call it right now. But inside the pump room was one of those places where the Rat Pack would hang out back in the day. Inside was booth number 1, which was famous in its day because it had a telephone right there at the table. And lots of celebrities knew the number of the telephone at the Astor Hotel, so you never know who might just decide to call you for something to do that night. There's Phyllis Diller answering the phone, and maybe it was someone interesting on the other end, or maybe that's just kind of the face Phyllis Diller was always making. We have got Judy Garland with little Liza Minnelli here. I just heard that record she did with the Pet Shop Boys in the late 80s the other day. A really interesting version of Losing My Mind. There's Bogey and Bacall hanging out at booth number 1, complete with the telephone. Now, the pump room has another little connection to rock and roll history. One time they turned a guy away because he didn't have a jacket, and that inspired him to call his next album, No Jacket Required. Phil Collins, if you're into that sort of thing. Now, one other thing to mention is that back in the old days, before the Great Chicago Fire, there was a brewery around here, the Eagle Brewery, underneath which Mr. Huck had dug a couple of miles of brick tunnels. Now, these were to keep his beer aged and cool even in the summertime. Mr. Huck is now at Graceland Cemetery. His son has a whole big mausoleum that he's probably not even in, but that's a whole other thing. But the brewery was eventually abandoned more or less after the Great Chicago Fire, but you can't really get rid of tunnels. Last time anybody is known to have seen the tunnels is when they were digging out the basement of the Ambassador Hotel back in the 1920s. It gave them the devil's own time digging out that basement. The tunnels are generally agreed to still be there. I keep hoping somebody's going to find an entrance. It was like a rite of passage for late 19th and early 20th century kids to play cops and robbers inside of these tunnels. Now, eventually, the parents got worried that there might be real robbers hiding out in there, as when the Plamondon family household was robbed, they found a lot of their stuff down in the tunnels. So they blocked them all off about 1910, but they're presumably still down there. And everybody loves a good tunnel story. I'd love it if they could find these things. Let's go up the block just a little ways here. Just up the block a little ways is the Playboy Mansion. Well, this was the original Playboy Mansion back when it was on State Parkway and Playboy operated out of Chicago. You can see the old Palmolive building for a while was the Playboy building. Now, this was all completely tricked out. This was back when Playboy was all about the style, all about mid-century bachelor pad aesthetics, and the articles were mostly like jazz reviews and like how to buy a tape recorder for under $500, things like that, all the latest gadgets. The inside, they had it all tricked out with a swimming pool that had a viewing window underneath so you could watch people going swimming. And then you could also just gather around the pool and listen to Shel Silverstein sing some of his country songs or some of his really ribald songs. Perhaps I like to imagine here he's singing I Saw Polly in a Porny or something. Or possibly Freakin' at the Freakers Ball, or one of any number of really dirty songs this guy wrote, in addition to things like Boy Named Sue, One's on the Way, The Unicorn. Shel Silverstein lived in the basement of this place. I know more than one person around Chicago who has reason to believe that Shel Silverstein might be their father. New York, same situation. There was a time when you could be a children's author and live in the basement of the Playboy Mansion. Those days before social media. And yeah, if you said that you read Playboy for the articles in those days, or especially even now, you're probably telling the truth. They paid more money for articles than anybody. They had great articles and like 2 pages of PG-13 pictures back in the day. Especially nowadays, if you wanted something more for the pictures, you have many other options. But let's move on up Dearborn a little bit. Next block over. We'll just check briefly here. 1239 Dearborn is a place where Ernest Hemingway lived, just briefly, after he got married. I didn't even have this in here originally, but everybody kept saying, what about Hemingway's house? Okay, there you go, Hemingway's house. There you have it, folks. Now let's move on up. A couple of blocks north, because some very unusual architecture in this fantastic townhouse. A design style that we would call Moorish, but even when we have that kind of influence, you don't usually see this much great use of color, at least in Western architecture. These are known as the Montagna Flats. They were designed by an by an architect named Kurt Gottig, who is not known for anything else. In 1887, it was built for Lucius Montagna, who was a shoe salesman, and obviously did very well for himself. You know, people like to say, well, Al Bundy couldn't possibly afford that house on a shoe salesman's salary. Well, this guy did okay. Now we're supposed to say, oh, in the 80s, Al Bundy could get a house like that working at the shoe store at the mall. And my dad used to say that he could never afford that house every time that show came on. But it is just such a cool-looking building. We'll move up just a little bit to the Augustus Warner House, a few blocks over. The Augustus Warner House recently cleaned up to look nice and slick, though it used to look like this with a little bit more color. Maybe not as elegant, but a little more colorful. But this was designed by Lawrence Hallberg, who was probably best known for the Chase Sanborn Coffee Warehouse building right on the Chicago River. Every architectural boat tour goes right by this building, but not a lot of people mention poor Lars Hallberg. Let's move up to Dearborn Street. Now, as many of you know, Lincoln Park was the old city cemetery right here on 1401 Dearborn. This would have been the entrance to the old city cemetery. And after City Cemetery was gone, they built this mansion here by the architect Asa Lyon. Built it for a guy named Luther McConnell, who was the credit manager of Marshall Fields. Hull House had their first meetings when they were incorporating in this place. Built in 1877, right here at Dearborn and Schiller. You can look in close here, they got these carvings of griffins, which I think are just utterly cool. I could never really get a whole shot of it. The whole building just doesn't fit in one shot properly. Maybe I should try with a fisheye lens. But also, if you get a little bit closer, there's this stained glass. I don't know when exactly they added this, but a lot of people have asked me about this one. This stained glass portrait is of Schiller, the poet, which of course makes sense. This also has a brief thing. It wasn't always set up to look like this either. It's got this gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous brick look now, but for a while they had the whole thing painted white. as seen when it appeared as Chez Louis in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Now, as of the time that I was first putting this tour together, it was owned by Richard Dreyhouse, but he died the day that I first did this tour, which seemed very odd. But he had a love of buying up buildings like this and having them just lovingly restored. Let's move up the way a little bit. Up to 1528, another block up. Go up to this yellow one. Just look at this architecture. Just incredible. This place, this yellow one, was the home of Carolyn Corbin. Now, Carolyn Corbin, you know, there are a lot of famous suffragists who are buried here in Chicago and part of my cemetery tours. She was not one of them. Carolyn Corbin was an anti-suffragist, so I guess, you know, kind of a pick me. So she would rant quite a bit on how voting for women would bring about the end of society. She said, "The American people will never have any sympathy with a doctrine that leads to promiscuous prostitution as a substitute for the family, and that would abolish the Christian home and set up a code of social morals by the side of which Mormon polygamy and the Mohammedan harem are commendable and altogether virtuous. Should such a calamity ever occur as the success of socialism, the last of its confiscation will be the home. And after that, chaos." Like, are you okay, Carolyn? Everything all right? She gave up on it after Illinois gave the women the vote in 1913, a few years before the amendment. She at least had the sense to know when she was beaten. And took the loss, instead of just coming up with some big conspiracy theory. Well, she probably had one of those, too. I bet I could even guess who was behind it. So up here we have got the Archbishop's Mansion, 1885 by James Willard, built for a home for 8 archbishops of Chicago. Though the current one did not move in. He lives at a Holy Family someplace. 19 chimneys in this place. And alongside it is this wooden alley. We'll back up and get another good shot of this. Very cool house. And then over alongside it is a wooden alley that was made in 1909 with these creosote and cedar blocks. But this is not original. It was restored in 2011 with black locust wood. At one point, there was 50 miles of wood alleys in the city. But then the Great Chicago Fire happened, and people started thinking, you know, maybe we should veer away from this. But a couple of them still survive. We're going to make our way around here. Back onto Lakeshore Drive. To find a museum that just never comes up for school groups. The Museum of Surgical Sciences, where you can find out that the materials that the ancient Romans used to remove foreign particles from their butts were very similar to the ones that we use today. Fascinating stuff. But this was a mansion based on this mansion, the Petit Trianon. It was like Marie Antoinette's summer home. But it was occupied for a long time by Eleanor Robinson, who was a match company heiress. She was kind of the driving force behind getting this one built. Now, her sister was engaged to a guy, but then Eleanor came home from college and stole him. And so she married this rich guy, then went off doing things on like hunting bears and getting a divorce. Now, they had a very mutual divorce. You couldn't really have one of those in those days. If the judge thought it was mutual, they wouldn't grant the divorce. So he moved around the block and lived away for a couple of years so they could say that she had been deserted. It took a couple of years before they would let you go get away with that back in those days. But is now the Museum of Surgical Sciences, featuring such things as trepaned skulls. Now, this was from a presentation about trepanning, which is the practice of drilling holes into one's skull for fun and profit. You weren't supposed to touch these. I kind of did. They feel like rocks. Layla totally caught me catching them. She ratted me out later. It's okay. I didn't get in trouble. But there's also Napoleon's death mask they have in here. So many cool things. And at the time, I was doing a series of emotive portraits of the Imperial Commander action figure. Here he is barreling through the galaxy looking for the heart of Saturday night. He's got this hangdog expression that makes portraits fantastic. And this place was a gold mine for Imperial Commander shots. There's some hardcore nudity, just what you wanted right there. Let's move around. 40 East Burton. It's a nice, elegant place. I love how the curves, the turrets, just kind of are suggested. They just kind of slip their way out. Now, this was designed by the architect Richard Schmidt, who also did things like the Schoenhofen Pyramid, and was the son of Ernst Schmidt, the most respected radical anarchist in Chicago back in the 1800s. So, this was built for a lawyer named John Shortle, but later it was the Midwest headquarters of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese. So the Catholic cardinal was around the block, the Greek Orthodox guys were over here. They could totally, meet up for badminton or whatever. Shortle was the president of the Humane Society himself. Let's go just down the block from here. This other mansion. Recently, a part of this was owned by Billy Corgan. I know he had it for sale. He might still own it. But this was known as the McCormick Patterson Mansion. If you get up close, it says that it was built for Sissy Patterson. Well, she was built for Sissy Patterson by Stanford White. But she was like 9 years old. Now, frankly, Stanford White doing things to impress a 9-year-old girl tracks. But really, it was built for her mother. She lived there until the time of her debutante ball. Sissy Patterson went on to be a newspaper editor in Washington, D.C., and eventually a newspaper owner. Granddaughter of Joseph Medill, came from a great Chicago newspaper family. Most of what we talk about her today is her wild and crazy love life, which has inspired many, many stories. And it's probably more polite to her memory than talking about her politics, which were awful. But at one point, this building became a school. Back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, it became a place called the Bateman School. Among people there were Virginia McManus was a teacher, who it later turned out was working on the side, you might say. And at one point, a couple of girls set fire to the place. Now, a friend of mine who went there said that this was a school for the absolute worst kids in the city. He just told stories and stories about it. But, it was well built. You couldn't hear the kids having sex in the next room, over in the bathrooms. But everybody knew it was going on. Now, we do have some video of this place. Now and then, these places will come up for sale, so we get some good real estate videos to show us what they're like on the inside. All right, let's move on up here. We're going to move to 1441 North State. This is just another one by Lars Hallberg. Kind of a Greystone style, but I feel like you can see little influences of a lot of other styles here. There's a little bit of Richardsonian Romanesque with the arch, and I would even say a little bit of the Chicago school, like you see it as Chase Sanborn Coffee Warehouse. Also, while we're on Astor, just a couple of cool things. First of all, we got generations of Chicago architecture here. We got 1431, which is by Holabird and Roche, a couple of guys who came out of William LeBaron Jennings' office. But then his son, Holabird Jr., teamed up with Root Jr. to form Holabird and Root, the Art Deco kings of the city. And right across the street from that Holabird and Roche one is an Art Deco townhouse by Holabird and Root. You don't see a lot of Art Deco in townhouses. They tend to be either recent postmodern or old Gothic style. Yeah, here we've got this fantastic Art Deco townhouse. Very kind of similar to the postmodern style ones that you see now. Well, let's get back on to stay. One of my very favorite buildings. This one with all of the green. All this Statue of Liberty green patina. 1528 North State. Architect Mr. Hauser for George Weiss, a beer baron, back when it was known as 540 State. Built in 1886. Now, in the early 20th century, let's look at a bit of this. I love the chimney style. I love that Gothic look. I love that like sea serpent looking thing up in the top. So, we got to veer off course a little bit here. In 1925, there was a guy named Floyd Collins who got stuck inside of a cave. And inside of the cave, people just pulled up and turned the whole situation into an absolute carnival. There were like hamburger stands popping up, people selling souvenirs as they tried to rescue Mr. Collins. Here's a bit of newsreel footage of it. They tried to figure out how to get him out of there, like, chaw off his leg or something. Not unlike when Timmy O'Toole fell down the well. Well, they're just bringing out some rocks here. But inside of 1925, inside of here at 1428 State, was a doctor by the name of Dr. Hazlitt. Now, Anita McCormick Blaine, a woman who, described by a neighbor as decidedly not like most people, the daughter of Cyrus McCormick, but grew up to be a socialist herself, more or less, hired Dr. Hazlitt to go amputate the leg of Floyd Collins. He was sent down there to the cave. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out. Collins eventually passed away inside of the place. But this too became a tourist attraction. They actually eventually got down to where he was and put him in a coffin and just left him there, preserved. Wild. But in any case, I do just love the style of this place. And this one too, we have a video of the inside of it. Also, there's a movie called Ace in the Hole that's based on that whole phenomenon. It's a very good movie. Title's a little on the nose. I think there's music that accompanies this. Let's hear some. Yeah. Yeah, if only Collins had showed up without a jacket. Look at that. Yeah, you're going to go through a lot of like Old English polish in this place. But worth it. I got about a minute to spare, as we'll just also really cover quickly some of the lost places here. There's a lot of original architecture still standing here, but then you got stuff like this that have come up here and there. This one replaces the mansion of Louise de Koven Bowen, shown here as a little girl at the time that she stole all of Eli B. Williams' gooseberries and gave herself explosive diarrhea. Taught her a big lesson about stealing, and so she became a social reformer. One of the Hull House ladies, and one of our major sources of the Hull House being haunted myth. Here she is as an adult. Now, this is the mansion that she built on this site. Now, she had a great story in her autobiography growing up with the city about the day that her father said, "Hey, there's a new park, let's go see it." And it was Lincoln Park, at the time still in the process of being changed over from the old city cemetery. She said everywhere you looked, there were like little bits of coffin, little bits of bone, like people had gotten up to go to Graceland or Rose Hill and left a bit of their anatomy behind as they went. And she walked around and said, I am never going to go to this park for fun. But when she grew up, she built a mansion on the site, and definitely thought that it was haunted, or her servants thought that it was haunted, because they were always, they knew that it had been a cemetery, they knew that bodies had been found when they were digging out the basement of the place. The servants would not go into the basement. I probably wouldn't either. But all right, everybody, that brings us around to the end of the evening. Next tour, I haven't listed next Thursdays yet. I'll get to it. But Saturday morning, we will be at Graceland Cemetery. You just go to adamchicago.com or mysteriouschicago.com, and that'll get you tickets. There's also an event page right up here on Facebook. Still some tickets available for Graceland on Saturday morning, about 36 hours away from right now. 36 and a couple more. So, all right, everybody, thanks a lot for joining me. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours. We will just put the thanks sign back up. Put that right there. There we go. Take that down. And we'll just hang out like we always do. So thanks for joining me, everybody. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago. Here's Benny Goodman at the Congress Hotel in Chicago.
And we are
All right.
reluctantly to leave
More
Benny
wine.
Goodman stomping at the Savoy. Benny Goodman's orchestra has been playing for you from the Joseph Urban Room
Safe
of the
travels,
Congress
Lauren.
Hotel in downtown Chicago. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
WEAF, New
Oh.
York.
Why, Benny? You just finished right off there. Let's try a whole other show. For some reason, it doesn't want to load the tracks tonight. There we go.
Presenting Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
Let's all be alligators and cut the rug. As we saw today, the next week's Patreon topic is going to be about the Jitterbug riot at Soldier Field, when 200,000 alligators, also known as ickies or crocodilies, showed up to dance. I'm an alligator. Eric Passover's been all right for me. Kristen, glad to have you back anyway. We haven't done too many of them in the last month or so. I've been out of town so much.
Let's dance to a half-hour rhythm by
Katie,
Benny
that's
Goodman and
rough.
his orchestra, the Raja Rhythm, playing for
That
you
is
from
rough.
the Joseph Urban Room of the Congress Hotel.
Thanks, Grace.
in
Thanks,
downtown
everybody. Thanks to
Chicago.
people who are kicking in
Starting
donations.
at Divorcee, the first number. Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
Oh, Octavio, have a good time at C2E2. Thank you, Gina. I was just looking up Club de Lisa the other day. Sun Ra got his start, one of his starts in Chicago, playing there. And it took me, I did the Rose Hill tour on Record Store Day, so I couldn't get in line to get the releases. It took me 9 stores to find Sun Ra's new Pink Elephants on Parade, a compilation of him and his orchestra doing Disney songs. Worth it. Vicky, yeah, well, it's a Cabernet, but it is the Aldi brand Winking Owl Cabernet, which I think means, yeah, wink, wink. It's Cabernet. I believe Sun Ra was playing with Earl Father Hines at the time, who was one of the bands who played at the Jitterbug Riot. Sabrina, we talk about Bachelor's Grove here now and then. I don't really take groups out there. Not so much afraid of the ghost, but the people you meet there are something else. Now, Kristen, I found the other new Sun Ra release at a lot of places. But the Pink Elephants on Parade I only found at the Loop Reckless after the mini tour today. Well, yeah, I am totally fine drinking Winking Owl or any other $3 or $4 wine because you know what? All wine pretty much tastes the same. I just like to say that because it makes some people so mad. I'm not usually one to just say things just to make people mad, but it's fun to watch people freak out when you say all wines taste the same, Animal House was just okay, you know. Octavio, yeah, that was probably Dusty Groove, which did not have pink elephants on parade by the end of the day. John Morrison of The Doors. Did he sing that song, Dire Maker? Phoenix.
And we might say rhythmically alluded.
Yeah, I think he's the guy who sang Dire Maker.
The day I let you get away.
Yes, James Taylor of Duran Duran is one of the most proficient bassists in the UK at the moment. Gives him a funky edge. As it's true, they said all those years ago, we will sell no wine before it's time. I know I've gotten a couple of messages about Mystericon. It just terrifies me to think it's that close. It's 6 months off, or 5 months off. But hey, if we were talking music right now, and I think we are, well, for one thing, the new St. Vincent album is out in a few hours. And for another thing, I do not know how I went as many years of my life as I did without listening to Dorothy Ashby, the jazz harper. Just fantastic couple of albums there. Dorothy Ashby. Don't know how I went this long, but it was out at the Reckless Records next to the Sun Ra, and I didn't pay $40 for a record I'd never heard before, but I'm going to make a note of that. Now I got to go back there. Laura, I will probably do a logo. I just haven't thought that far ahead yet.
Music by Benny Goodman and his orchestra. And the next tune.
It's hard for me to start thinking about Mystericon this soon. It's a very stressful period for me. I love Mystericon, but oh, it stresses me out getting all that together. And we're making sure all the tickets sell, and worrying if tickets are going to sell, etc. I'm fine. Every month I have a minor panic attack about how the Patreon's gonna look, so. Bob, it's pronounced Jamaica. Right now, we'll just worry about this thing on June 1st where I'm on the bill with Tom Skilling. I'm fine. Listening to the Patreon's always good, but are the numbers going to hold? Are people am I going to have more people drop than add? It looks okay this month, though. I need to be pushing the Patreon more, though. Laura, yeah, the Chicago Mysteries on WTTW show that I was on is doing a live event at the Peabody Mansion June 1st. Tickets sold out pretty fast. But it'll be me, I think Robert Lorzel's going to be there, Tom Skilling's going to be there, I think Dilla's going to be there. It'll be a regular roundtable. Should I interview Tom Skilling? I don't know, maybe I should.
Benny Goodman is playing for you from the Joseph Urban Room of the Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago. And his next tune, Lights Out.
Alaska. Laura, my dad will be jealous. He loves the Alaska shows. I hope I have a good hair day. I'm having a good hair day today, if I do say so. I hope I have one on the day that we do that thing. I really got to get these podcasts off the ground, dude. The whole point of the podcast, the one from the Vaults podcast. I also kind of want to do one called Gruesome Clues, spelled the old way. Night Phoenix. This wine is putting me to sleep. I'll almost never forgive Eli. When he came to visit me very early on when I moved here like 20 years ago, he saw Tom Skilling on TV. I was like, this guy's awful on TV. Like, we're the city that put Siskel and Ebert on television. We put him on TV because he knew his stuff. Gruesome Clues with both gruesome and clue would be spelled EW. In the old days. I think I got an example here. Yes, I have one here. Gruesome Clues.
And again, Benny Goodman presents his lady of song, Helen Ward, singing Alone.
Having to think some kind of blocks how messy my apartment is right now. Well, all right, everybody. I'm getting a little overwarm in this jacket, so I think it is time that I knock off for the day. Tomorrow, Find a Grave Friday here on Mysterious Chicago at 10 o'clock Central. No, I have not decided where we're going yet. We'll figure all of that out. Maybe I'll find some errand I need to run and pick a cemetery near there. But now that I've finally found Pink Elephants on Parade by the Sun Ra Orchestra, I don't have to position myself next to record stores quite so much. So, Saturday, Graceland Cemetery. Tomorrow morning, Find a Grave Friday. So everybody, thanks a lot for joining me. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours, telling you all to stay safe and stay strong. And of course, if you can, do stay spooky, everybody. See ya.